Hi brothers and sisters, this is the third time trying to make this video. I started down by the lake, but it's a bit too chilly, so I thought I'd come up to the fire, and I just wanted to read something from Light for the Journey by Sine. It's called Discipleship and the Call to Live in God's Kingdom. She starts out that the Vatican City, with the majestic dome of St. Peter's Basilica at its heart, dominates the modern city of Rome. To the north is that favorite of all visitors to Rome, the gigantic Vatican Museum, with its 4 exhausting miles of displays. In the basement is an almost deserted room filled with sarcophagi from the 1st and 3rd century. Here, chiseled in stone on the coffins of long-forgotten people of faith, are the most exciting images of rejoicing and fulfillment I have ever seen. Christ, sitting on a donkey, making his triumphal way into Jerusalem, confronted me at every turn. Swirling around him are rejoicing throngs of people waving palm branches. The disabled are raising their crutches above their heads as they are healed. Hungry people are being fed with fish and bread, and in the corner a man is rising from the dead. What will God's resurrection-created world look like? Obviously, that is a question none of us can really answer. But as I looked at these exciting images of Jesus, I had a fairly good, turning the page, fairly good idea. Jesus doesn't just reveal God to us. He also shows us what God's new world is like. Through his words and actions, we catch glimpses of a transformed world in which all barriers of race and class are removed. It transforms hate into love, scarcity into abundance, greed into generosity, violence into peace, and oppression into justice and equality. In God's new world, all lines of separation are erased. The hungry are fed, the oppressed set free, and we are invited into a new creation of wholeness and healing, of redemption and renewal. Just as Jesus' life was inspired by the inbreaking of God's resurrection world, so were the lives of the early disciples. They left homes and jobs and family. They turned their backs on the values of Roman and Greek culture and embraced God's new world and its values of love and mutual care, because they believed that in the coming of Christ this new world had broken into ours. They believed that their primary allegiance was no longer to the kings and rulers of this world, but to Christ. Through baptism, they have become citizens of God's new world. Their vision became this dream of shalom, wholeness, and restoration fulfilled in Christ, a vision of all people, including the dispossessed, the excluded, and the needy, drawn under Christ's lordship into a single family. Their vision became one in which all persons find a place of abundant provision in a new community that is loving, caring, and mutually supportive. They saw all humanity as heirs of a single hope and bearers of a single destiny, the restoration, care, and management of all God's creation in a new heaven and a new earth. Their purpose had become the inbreaking of this new world into the lives of those whom they met and interacted. This is the same vision and purpose that has inspired followers of Christ throughout the ages. It motivated the Celtic Saint Bridget to feed thousands each day from the monastery at Kildare, and led Francis of Assisi to give up his wealth and privilege to work among the poor. It inspired John Wesley in the 18th century to not only preach to the poor, but to become a leader in many social justice issues. It led William Wilberforce to fight against slavery, and Elizabeth Fry to visit prisons in 19th century England. Central to God's resurrection world is what James calls the royal law of God and law of neighbor. The culture of God's new world is one of mutual care and concern, and the language is the language of love. N.T. Wright expresses it in this way from his book called Surprised by Hope on page 288. Love is not a duty, it is our destiny. It is the language that Jesus spoke, and we are called to speak it so that we can converse with him. It is the food that they eat in God's new world, and we must acquire a taste for it here and now. It is the music God has written for all his creatures to sing, and we are called to learn it and practice it now. Incredibly, Jesus also invites us to join these early disciples and the great cloud of witnesses throughout the ages who have lived as representatives of this new world. Together with all followers of Christ, God asks us to join in the exciting drama of seeing the world change now in partial ways in anticipation of the day when Christ